Good morning. Hi, Rachelle Chapman of Adecco. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, Mona. I'm doing great, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm great. Welcome to the U.S. Veterans Magazine. We're so honored here to interview you since the company is being recognized as a top Milspouse employer for 2026. So I just want to say congratulations again. That is a great honor. And we're so excited to talk with you, learn a little bit more about you and about your programs and Adecco. So first, we're going to start with the very beginning, and we'd love for you to tell us a little more about your background. I know that you're a military spouse, but maybe all our readers don't know. And I'd love to know how long you've been there, your role, and basically your journey from there to senior leader at Adecco.
Super. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with you and also for the wonderful award. A couple things. One, I would love your readers to know that the Adecco Group has been in this space of hiring military talent for 24 years. And in fact, our program, which started back in 2002, began as a military spouse employment program. So we were kind of, you know, first, so in some ways, in terms of prioritizing military spouse employment. And so it wasn't until many years later that we added veterans. Now I have
And
the
that's really
privilege.
unique because most companies, I'm sure you're aware of, kind of do it the other way.
That's exactly right. Yes, most companies start with a veteran hiring initiative or program, and then eventually realize, they have half of a program, and so they need to add the military spouse to their program. And we kind of worked just the opposite. I have the privilege of being able to lead our program called the Military Alliance Program, which really encompasses everything we do to employ military connected talent, educate military connected talent, and engage the military community. And you mentioned before, I am a veteran military spouse. I am lucky enough to be with the Adecco Group for 20 long years. If you
Wow,
had told
that's
me 20
amazing.
years ago, Mona, that I would still be working here, I would tell you that you're nuts. In fact, my just if entertain me for a second, and I'll just kind of you had try to kind of ask me to share a little bit of my journey.
Yes,
So
no, we want to know.
when my husband and I PCSed to DC back in 2005, I really kind of had I always kind of said, like, if I ever moved to DC, I would pursue a role on Capitol Hill. And at that time in my life, that was kind of a dream job. Um, don't judge me because it was a little bit of a different time than back then.
Sure.
And so anyway, that's really what I wanted to do when we moved there, what I wanted to do professionally. And so while I was, I'd been to grad school, I had traveled, I thought, oh, I'm a shoo-in for one of these staff jobs. And to my surprise, I was having a hard time getting one. And it was actually my husband that said, hey, why don't you go work for like a staffing company? I did that once in college and it's great. And so I opened up the phone book, found the letter A, Adecco, as the
Oh,
first staffing. That was my
wow.
wise, informed decision on how I
Ah,
pursued employment back in 2005. Turned out to be the best decision I ever made. They hired me on the spot. They needed, I thought they were going to put me to work somewhere, and instead they brought me in-house to be a recruiter, which I didn't know anything about. I was like,
wow.
I don't know what this means to be a recruiter. I don't know what staffing is, but I'll learn. And shortly into me being hired, our CEO, who at the time back then was a retired one-star general, he called up his old Army buddy and said, hey, we want to start a government relations division inside our organization. We don't want to hire it on the outside anymore. Will you come start it up? Well, he needed an EA. Mona, I was not interested. I was like,
Uh-huh.
I didn't go to school to be an EA. I wanted to do, all these other things. And long story short is it was the best decision I ever made to take a little bit of a step back right? And what taking that job did was it taught me a lot, gave me a lot of access to senior leadership, and really helped me ultimately get to the place that I am today, which is leading all of our military programming across the Adecco Group. Now, today I sit in our foundation, in our corporate foundation, and that's where I get to dream up all these big ideas and do work that I love each and every day, which is to give back to the military community. So I'm very fortunate.
I think that's amazing, but I think you hit on something so important that our readers, especially the mill spouses, should listen to, in that you said you took a step back to move forward. Instead of saying, no, I'm not going to do that, but look, this door is opening and open for you. And you didn't go, oh, well, that's not what I want. And it's not, maybe what I'm qualified for. You took a step back and then look at where it took you. And I think that's great advice, that sometimes you might have to do that. Don't you agree?
I agree 100%. And one thing I would add to that, and I think this is an important part of the story that I left out, is not only do you sometimes have to take a step back, and I think you do that when you really evaluate, is there an opportunity for me to learn, to grow my network, to grow my skills
Right.
professionally? And sometimes the only way you do that, and this is the second part of that lesson, is to ask for what you want. I was full of gumption and I was a hard worker. I knew exactly what I wanted. And so in that interview with this, retired '06, I said, listen, bud, this interests me, but only interests me if this is an opportunity for me to learn government relations and how you do what you do. I'm not interested in expense reports and travel. I'll do that. But
Right.
so asking for what you want, I've done
That's
that
great.
consecutively over the last 20 years, and that has also served me equally well. So to all you military spouses out there, don't be afraid to ask for what you want, whether you're early in your career or you've been at this for a while.
I think that is such wise advice. So tell me that second half.
I love telling this part of the story. So the first conversation came with my spouse, of course, and then I went to my boss and I said, listen, we're done. We're getting out of the military. It's been a wonderful adventure. We've done 21 years, but I'm not going to be moving anymore. And we are going to have some stability in our life and for our family. And I just want you to know that I'm ready for the next move professionally. I want a promotion. I want more responsibility, and I want to get back on that rocket ship that I started on in 2005. And she said, Rachelle, I've been waiting for this phone call. I
Oh,
knew you had more gas in the tank. Let's go. And we developed a plan. Within 6 months, I was promoted into that next role. Was promoted again this year, and am doing if I can a humble brag on myself, I guess. I don't know, that sounds weird, but feel like I'm doing the best work of my life, and at least the work
oh,
that
this is
I
wonderful.
absolutely love. And so that's really, Mona, what inspired me to create a full program that I call It's My Turn, specifically for the veteran military spouse who is in a similar situation I was in a few years ago, which is, okay, I'm no longer constrained by moving with the military anymore. And maybe I need to kind of sit with myself and figure out, who am I? Like, not only like do a little identity check outside of being
Sure.
a spouse, but what do I want for myself professionally? And so we've created this lovely 12-week program that helps veteran military spouses, and it's free. Um, Go through the process of career exploration through assessments, and we provide upskill and reskilling courses, and a track to like there as well, and ultimately help them find employment. So it's this really beautiful 360 program. And just we launched it last year in 2025, just seeing the growth and the development personally and professionally for the women, or not women, excuse me, it's open for men too, but just happened to
Sure.
be women in some of our cohorts last year. For veteran military spouses has been extraordinary. I mean, just from, man, what motivated me 5 years ago is not, or 10 years ago is not what motivates me
It's not the same.
today. And
Yeah.
it's been so worthwhile. And it was a space that was kind of missing, Mona. There wasn't really a
Sure.
lot of programming for the veteran military spouse in this fully supported 360 kind of way. And so I'm very proud to bring something to the market that really addresses their needs.
Excellent. I couldn't help but think about the other military spouses that kind of feel not, I don't want to say defeated, but maybe that they're not at their potential. But listening to you talk, and yes, you had a supportive husband, but here is a company that really supported you. And when you were ready, they kind of springboarded you and really believed in you and wanted you to succeed. And there aren't a lot of companies like that. Usually some companies don't even understand the value of the military spouse. I wouldn't mind if you kind of touched on that, but I find your story not just inspiring, but motivating. It's so motivating because
Mhm.
you are at your best life now. Your
Yes.
kids are older.
Yes.
I don't know if you have the empty nest yet or not. Maybe you do. You're been, you know, 20 years, I would think so. That look at that smile. I could tell you are having your best life now. And
I love it.
I think this is something that is so important to put out there, to realize who you are, what you can do, but also find a company like the Adecco Group that believe in you and know your value and support you all the way. Because part of this wouldn't happen if you didn't have that team, that
Mm.
village, maybe that mentor who's your boss, who makes you feel this way, that you get up and you want to come to work and you put in the work. And I just want to thank you for that and letting our readers know that there's so much more out there. And I kind of touched a little bit on the value of a military spouse, and I know that we've spoken before how there's a village and managing the village. And I understand it completely, but could you touch on that a bit, on maybe just a few reasons that you and your company see the value in the military spouses in the employment world?
Well, and yes, absolutely. I'm happy to. And let me I also want to touch on one other thing that you mentioned, and I didn't get to add kind of in my backstory, and it's really important to me. And this will tie into answering your question, I swear. You said it kind of a little bit already, which is I have been very lucky at the last 20 years to have been led by leaders that did recognize my value. And I
Mhm.
mentioned to you, when we started our military spouse hiring program back in 2002, our CEO was a retired one-star general. And not every company, has senior leadership that come from the military. I realize that. But those that do inherently understand the value that military spouses bring, that's why he was such a big proponent of it back then.
Exactly.
And then I told you in my story that his old Army buddy, retired '06, that he hired to lead GR. What I didn't tell you was, um, I remember a day that at the time, our CHRO, Chief of Human Resources, came to visit us in DC. And I know why she was there. She met with my boss at that time for quite a while. And then she walked over to my desk and she sat across from me and she said, "Rachelle, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but we had to let Larry go." This was during the recession, like 2007, 2008. Uh, and the one thing that he asked was that we take care of you.
Oh, wow.
So what do you want to do?
Wow.
And my response was, I want his job.
Ugh.
And I was like, I don't want the pay, I don't want the fancy title. I just want to continue this work that we've started and that he's allowed me to kind of learn underneath him. And which is another wink back to ask for what you want, Mona. Wink, wink.
That's what
Um,
I actually just wrote that down. That's exactly what I wanted to say. You hit the nail. And I think that is so important, to know what you want and to ask for it. And you've done it so many times. And you didn't, I don't think you took time to really think about it. I think you always knew, and you didn't have that fear to just say, I want his job. I mean, that's amazing. That says a lot about you, Rachelle, but I'm just saying this is great advice for women. Know what you want and don't be afraid to say it, especially when they're asking you, what do you want? Say it. I may not know you for a long time, but I can tell a lot about character. And I think that both you are lucky to be with the Adecco Group, but vice versa, Adecco is lucky to have you there too. And thank you so much for your time, but also all that you do. And thank you for this interview and all this amazing experience and advice, motivation, and inspiration that you give all our readers. And I really look forward to putting this together and to see where in your future as well. And I hope we can stay in touch as well.
I would love that, Mona. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Again.